Today, we have Chris Jennings, who is the founder of Chris Jennings Group, a consultancy which specializes in sales, leadership, and business development. With over 35 years worth of experience, Chris has helped businesses enhance their communication strategies, resulting in over 2 billion in additional revenue. His best-selling books, Conversations Made Easy and The Client Retention Matrix, challenge traditional sales techniques and provide actionable frameworks for leadership, customer retention, and team building. He's a former triathlete who conquered the Escape from Alcatraz triathlon. Chris resides in California, where he combines his passion for business with mentoring future leaders. Hello, Chris. How are you today?
Doing great, Mark. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for being on the show. Really looking forward to this. You've got a wealth of experience, and I'm really going to delve into
Yes.
how you help your clients, how you grow, how you've grown your business. So really looking forward to this. The first question I ask all of my guests is, what does a business mindset mean to you?
Uh, Business mindset, I think it's the perfect combination of purpose, passion, and potential. Meaning, you've got some purpose behind the business that what you do and what you accomplish for your clients. You have passion in what you're doing each day, and the potential is enormous for you to grow based on the combination and thoughtful execution of your purpose and passion. And if you've got that combination of those three, that's a great business mindset, in my opinion.
That's incredible. That's the three P's. Absolutely love that. How do you assess people's or businesses' potential? Let's just focus on potential. How do you, when you're talking to them, maybe your first conversation, how are you assessing the potential of that business?
Part of it is the market. Part of it is how far have they gotten into the market? What have they been doing? There's a lot of times, so we usually have a framework where we ask everybody to come up with their top 5 activities. Normally, I find that people are doing one or two things to grow their business,
Mm.
and so I automatically know if you're only doing one or two things, and I know there's at least 5 high impact strategies that you could be executing on. My guess is that there is considerable threefold, fourfold potential just based on that conversation and based on the activities that you're engaged in and the things that you're not doing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We'll go a lot more into
Yeah.
your company, Chris Jennings Group, throughout the episode. But I want to ask you, tell me one thing about your upbringing which reflects on who you are today.
So I was comparing notes with somebody the other day about when we started working. And I think it was a paper route, maybe at 10 or 11. And then I was knocking on doors, looking to either shovel snow in driveways in Connecticut or cut their lawn in the summer, past putting flyers in mailboxes, and then just going door to door as an 11 or 12-year-old looking for customers.
Right.
And I think that's where I started that early entrepreneurial spirit and my connection to sales, which really is, I always look at sales as you're helping people solve problems that they couldn't help fix without your help.
Mm.
That's all you're doing in sales. And everybody in their business brings a unique set of skills and offerings to the marketplace. It's our job to go find other people that need that sense of those offerings and those skills. And I think that's where it came to me early. And then later, I think as I got into my career, I found that I had a knack for helping people figure out what to say. So many people in the world today struggle with, I would do that, but I'm not sure what to say. I don't know how to approach the customer. I don't know how to ask for more money. I don't know what to say when I've just met somebody that doesn't sound completely clunky and awkward. And I found that I just had a bit of a knack for helping people figure out what to say to other people.
Again, before we go into the actual how you're helping your clients and how you just on that, so you were doing lots of paper rounds and shoveling snow and things like that. But what drove you to, was your family entrepreneurial? Was your father or your mother?
Yeah. No, my dad was a corporate guy. My mom was just a crazy lady, and but fun. And my dad was a corporate guy, executive on a train going into New York City every day, working in the advertising business. And I think I have maybe a drive to be productive. I've always felt like I want to be productive with whatever I'm doing, if whether it's a charity thing or it's work. And I also felt like I had desire to be able to accomplish things on my own. I didn't want, and I think I was probably raised that way too by my dad. He would help me figure out how to earn money and maybe incentivize me to do that. Some of the work that I did obviously was at his house that he owned, but I quickly learned I could branch out, and I just had a desire to do stuff and maybe accomplish some things.
Yeah, I just find that really fascinating. And we're just going last question on this on about your upbringing. If you weren't being taught it from a family, so I came from a corporate. My father was a corporate. I joined corporate,
Mhm.
worked in corporate, but it was an evolution of mine to go into entrepreneurship and business owner.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a deliberate attempt. It just happened over a personal development journey, which then led into business and finance and marketing, and then starting my own businesses. I just find it fascinating that it seems like there was no influencer that really pushed your entrepreneurial spirit. Was there?
Well, the other thing, so I'm assuming you've read and your listeners have read the five love languages,
Yes, I have.
and one way you identify your love languages is you think about the things that you like in those. If you like words of
Mm,
affirmation and people give you compliments, you really like that. But it also says to help you zero in on it, think about what you don't like. If you really don't like people telling you you've done something wrong or speaking to you in a curse sort of way or curt sort of way, the that probably means words of affirmation are high up there. So my early corporate experience out of college, I was hired by a giant company, and at the time it was one of the top 10 largest companies in the world, and I was doing fine in a corporate structure. But what I learned early on in large corporations is, to me, your success is really based on the people that you report to. So if you have a great boss that is promoting you, you're probably going to have a great career. If you have a boss that is more interested in their career than your career, then there's a really good chance your career doesn't go that far. And so I think I learned what I didn't want, and it brought me back to my early childhood roots of, hey, I like to do something on my own
mm,
and be responsible. Even though, so when I started the business I'm in now, I was married, three kids, and I had a $14,000 to $15,000 a month nut. I had to like to pay to keep the lights on, to keep the gas in the car and food in the belly. I hadn't make that much money. And look, year one of starting this business was not a super profitable time. And it was scary,
mm,
right?
mm.
And that's why I think a lot of people get scared out of going entrepreneurial. I've loved it. I wouldn't do it any other way. And I'm a huge proponent of rooting for entrepreneurs to be successful
Yeah,
too. So
yeah,
I'm a fan of entrepreneurs in
yeah.
general.
Me too. 100%.
Yeah, cool.
Your Fortune 100 role, you said you worked in a large enterprise, large corporate.
Yeah.
So did you not have the manager that was developing you? Did you find that your progress was maybe slower than you wanted it to be? What was your experience in corporate?
I I was on the fast track. I had 8 different addresses in my first 4 years, and everybody thought I was great. I was doing fine, on my way to be president. But and then I ran into one boss that, all of a sudden we were clashing more than we were clicking. And I had to fire somebody in the company. I'll just tell you the story. I had to fire somebody that reported to me for stealing.
Oh, right,
So the person that I fired for stealing came to her and told her a bunch of lies about, I don't know what he even said about me.
right.
And she immediately came to me and said, "Listen, you'll be lucky to keep your job. You'll never get promoted again in this company," without even asking me what
Mm,
my side of the story was. After firing somebody who was stealing, I thought, this doesn't seem right. And within a week, I was actually promoted again and moved out to somebody else. So it didn't hamper my career. But what it told me was my career really depends upon my boss
mm,
in a large corporate
yeah.
environment. And if I have a great boss, and I've seen that my wife has had similar
Mm,
experiences, and
mm,
and we've all had experiences like that. If you got
yeah,
a great boss, it's probably a great job.
yeah.
If you don't have a great boss, probably not a great job. And I know coaching leaders, it's hard to be a great
Mm.
boss. Not everybody's naturally a great boss.
Tr
So that was all part of my
So you
experience.
transitioned to opening the Chris Jennings Group. So what
Mhm.
made you want to make that change? And what was day one like after you resigned and left, and you then had this business that you were starting?
Yeah. So I first went to, I bought into a different business. I built it up and sold it. I hated it. I did it for money.
What was the business?
And I did it. It was auto repair, car
Right.
wash, and it was like a franchise, and I was gonna have location, but I hated it. I couldn't stand it, and so about 5 years into that 7 year run, I just made a decision. I was going to do something that fit me, where I had the perfect intersection of purpose, passion, and potential. And I went on a journey to go find my next career choice, and I landed in this field.
Mm.
And so when I started this day one was me in a phone book in my living room with my three young children running around screaming their heads off, opening up the yellow pages, looking for businesses that might want to work with me. And I actually tell this story in Conversations Made Easy. I'd forgotten about it till now. And I called this water filtration company and struck up a conversation with their sales leader, and he invited me out to come talk to them. And next thing you know, I had my very first client. And so it was literally me in the yellow
Right.
pages, circa whatever that was, 95 ish. Yeah. So it was scary, and I was mostly broke for a year. So that was the other feeling that I remember. I had a lot of debt collectors and bill calling me like, "Hey, you're behind on your payments," and there was a recession going on, so it was scary. But I just worked through it, and I've always been a worker, and I knew I could work through it. It was just scary.
Yeah. And it sounds like mentally you just powered through the pain threshold and just kept making the phone calls, kept attending meetings. Slowly you get one client, you move to two clients. How when most of my listeners are a little bit more developed than that, but if there's someone listening that wants to start a business, they've got an idea, they're in the ideation stage. What
Mhm.
advice would you give those early stage listeners on how to like power through and make those phone calls?
So there's a couple of topics in that. Number one, just figure out what your goals are. What is it
Mm,
you're trying to
mm,
accomplish? How many? Then come up with figure out what your revenue targets, your gross profit targets, your income targets. And then one of the key goals is how many people do you have to have a face-to-face meeting with per week on Zoom or in
mm, mm.
person or however you do business. And then figure out your top 5 activities. And that's where because if it's just you on the phone, you're probably going to get tired. You're going to get worn out. So for me at that time, it was a mix of phone calls, referrals, networking at business groups, speaking at different association events, webinars, seminars, things, those sorts of
Mm.
things. And I knew exactly what my top 5 activities were, and still do to this day, as I have my list of my top 5 activities that I've just rewritten for this stage of my career in front of me. So I don't care if you're just starting out, or you got $1 million of revenue, or 10 million, or 100 million. I think you need to know your top 5 activities for work. You need to know your top 5 activities for your personal life. And if you spend most of the time doing those things, you'll probably have a good life
Yeah,
and a good
I think
business.
that's a great methodology to live our lives by. So you've worked when you started your consultancy. By now, you've generated over $2 billion revenue for your clients. What strategies have you deployed in your business to help your clients achieve such staggering numbers?
Well, we're very hands on, and so on our assignments, and we work in any industry you can imagine. I had a call yesterday with a healthcare affiliated group, and they have probably 5 or 6 different business development arms that go out, and they have 5 or 6 different entities that they call on. And for us, it's figuring out the nuances of each one of those conversations and narrowing down some options for the team that are going to be palatable and easy for them to have. because that's why I named my first book Conversations Made Easy, because I have this basic belief that the entire world is doing everything in its power to never have another conversation with a live human being again. And part of the reason why is it's sometimes for a lot of people, it takes a lot of energy to talk to other human beings. And especially if you're talking to them about that other human being giving you money for whatever it is that you do, now it's really got it just you get bogged down in fear and head trash and self doubt and all the nonsense that the thought bubbles that occur to people. So to me, it's helping people have the right conversations with the right people, the right conversation with the right frequency, and setting it up so that those opportunities prevail themselves in a thoughtful way.
Something we've just missed, and I want to give you time to talk about that. So tell me the
Sure.
areas that the Chris Jennings group covers. So you obviously sales and business development are part of what you do, but just tell me
Mhm.
exactly the areas that you help your clients with.
For any employee in an organization that has to talk to a customer, have any live conversation, we're going to help the communication skills between that team member at the service provider with that customer. And that could be whether it's a salesperson, a business developer, it could be a project management team, it could be an installer, a tech IT support desk. We help with communication with the mindset of how do we make this communication mutually beneficial so that our customers are better served and we grow our business at the same time. So we help with that. We really dive deep into referral strategies. I think the best way to do business is through referral, getting referred from your customer to another customer. And so we really are, I think we're specialists in the referral strategies. And then we have a lot of strategies about helping people improve their skill sets. As I was talking to another business owner in construction yesterday, and I said, "What kind of skill set development are you doing right now for your team?" And he said, "We're not really doing any, frankly." And so I think a lot of companies, and especially smaller companies, big companies know they have to develop skills of their team
Yeah.
members. Small companies are just busy trying to get stuff done. So we overlook skill development. And I think what I've found is that there is so much connection created and loyalty created with your employees and with your team members if if your team members are developing new skills as a result of working for the organizations that they now work for.
So I want to break down, you've given me a lot of points and I've written down a few things. Before we go into skill
Sure.
development, I want to talk about referrals. So
Yes, sir.
referrals and renewals, I think, are some of the most undervalued areas of business development sales that we can actually do. Why is
Yeah.
that, and how do you help your clients build that idea of renewals and referrals as a
Yeah.
cornerstone of their business?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Mark. That's why I wrote a whole book about it, the client retention matrix, right? And the whole theme of that is really how do we develop these great relationships with clients such that they're so happy with us that they naturally want to refer us to at least two other clients per year. And that's always my goal for everybody that I work with is that I want every client of yours to be so happy with the way that work is turning out that every one of those clients introduces you to at least two other clients every year. And if you have that happening, the
Yeah.
multiplication effect, if you just follow the math of they told two friends and they told two
Yeah.
friends, you're going to get to pick and choose the best of those customers out there that fit your business the best. Now, why do people not ask for referrals? Number one is fear.
Mm,
Okay. Lack of confidence. This will be a theme that comes up again and
right.
again. I feel like there is a growing lack of confidence in our world, unfortunately. I was talking before about me as a 12-year-old knocking on neighbors' doors and asking to rake the leaves or cut some trees down or whatever. I don't know that how many families in the world would let their 12-year-old do that today out of
No, you
fear,
wouldn't.
right? So
You
number
wouldn't.
one,
And I'll tell you
yeah.
something. Like it's a very it's slightly different, but it's like me. I grew up in the 80s and 90s,
Uh-huh.
and as a 10-year-old, 11, yeah, 10-year-old, before I went to like your high school, I would go out at 8 o'clock in the morning on my bike, and I would just explore the area, go and meet friends, whatnot. Right. My
Yeah.
kids are now 10 and 8. There is no
Hmm.
way they're going out on a Saturday morning from 8 to late, or 8 till 6 till they got hungry. And I say that as a sort of joke, but it is actually a really important point
Yeah.
that is an advent of digital, like that we're on social media more, there's less connection. I actually think there is a
Yeah.
massive point you're making there, which is not just in business, across all aspects of life and culture and society that we live in. This element of confidence that people have to actually go forward and promote themselves, promote their
Yeah.
businesses, sell to people,
Yeah.
have the confidence to do that. How are you bridging that
Yeah.
gap with that generation that possibly struggle more with that than maybe ours did? Just a quick one. I just wanted to say thank you very much for joining me today and being with me on this show. One thing that is really, really important I want to share with you is this show is growing really well, and I'm so proud of it, and I'm so pleased that you're enjoying this content. But if you could please hit the follow and subscribe to this channel, it will really help the channel on its being able to grow and the people that we can have on this show. So please do consider, if you have a moment, please can you hit the subscribe button and the follow button, and I would really appreciate it.
Yeah. So uh, I'll try to tackle both because we got a looming question. So the fear and lack of confidence, and then going back to the referral piece, and then it's not a play in the playbook.
Mm,
So if you don't have that as a part of your process, and you're not coaching and developing the skills, so at least starting the conversation. And what I always say to bridge the gap of, so let's assume you're hiring people that don't have the confidence to ask for
mm,
referrals. Let's just assume
yeah,
that only less than 10% of the people you hire will ever have enough confidence to naturally do that on their own. So how do you get more confident with the new skill? You practice it in safe situations. You practice it repetitively till it becomes something that doesn't require any energy. Because any new skill has a high energy requirement. The more you do that skill, the less energy that is required. I would imagine your first podcast,
it's
you were
terrible.
probably like, oh, it was crazy,
Yeah.
right? But today you're like, oh God, I got 1 minute. I got to get on here. And it's the same thing with referrals. So if you can just do the skill development internally, now, what most companies lack is somebody on their team that actually could give their team the words and the things to
Mm,
say that sound natural,
mm,
that sound authentic,
yeah.
that sound relatable, because that's what society craves. We crave honesty, authenticity, relatability. That's what we crave from one human being to another. And unfortunately, what happens, most companies don't have that internal team member that could say, this is how I would say it. And everybody goes, oh, that makes a ton of
Mm,
sense. Or it gives the team three options. You could say it this way, you could say it that way, you could say it this other
mm,
way. And if what I've found is part of why I wrote these books is, I'm not going to work forever. But I wanted, it's part of why I narrated the books myself on
right,
Audible. And which same thing with the skill thing over time on book two. And I got one last book in me, and that's it, Mark.
right,
One last,
right.
and this is for our kids to read, the last book.
Okay.
So I'll let you
I'll
know when it comes
I'll
out.
ask you
But
about that later. Go on, carry on.
yeah, for sure. But if you practice that skill and you get people doing it, all of a sudden they're doing it all the
Mm,
time. And that takes some time and some focus and some energy. And the other aspect I'll add is it requires thoughtful leadership. There has to be somebody in a leadership role that sees that
yeah.
opportunity and builds in time for their team to acquire those
And just
skills.
asking. Like there's this like
Yeah.
to it's not really a taboo, it's just like a sort of fear factor of people just not feeling confident enough to just ask. And sometimes you have to
Yeah.
ask to get what you want. It's
But I'll come back to, do you have are you in a career where you have the right mix of purpose, passion, and potential?
I love that.
And if you're purposeful and passionate about the career that you're in, asking seems like a really helpful thing to do.
Yeah.
But if you're not, and you're like a square peg cramming yourself into a round hole every day,
Mm.
it's harder.
So one
So,
of the things you other put you talked about skill development for your for that you help with your clients. I want to ask you a
mhm,
slightly different tack on skill development. How do you work with your people in your team to develop their
mhm,
skills?
sure, great question. Does the shoemaker have shoes?
Yeah. I want to learn from how you're actually doing it, not just how you're teaching it.
So what we do for clients is what we do for
Yeah.
ourselves. So we have countless hours of video. I'm going to say we have thousands of hours of video of how we do what we do.
Okay.
And we have it cataloged so that whenever we bring in a new team member, they start digesting video of meetings that we've had, of trainings and coaching sessions that we've run. So all the video, like video is such a great
Mm.
resource, and it's so affordable, and it's so easy to work with.
Yeah.
And so and that's what we do for clients too, is just make sure our clients are capturing enough video examples. Cause I always say you have to give your team members examples of what success looks
Yeah.
like. So for our people, we have thousands of examples of what success looks like, what it sounds like. And they can review that in a massive video catalog. And every company has the capacity to do that.
Yeah.
And it's not that hard. It just takes some time and attention.
Yeah. It's really interesting because how people learn is actually something that has been fascinating me. So some people are audio, like my listeners will
Mhm.
be listening to this on a podcast and will be in the gym or commuting and they'll be listening, and that's the way they learn. Some people
Yeah.
less than usual, less than used to be, were written. So they'll read a book,
Mhm.
they'll read an article, read a research paper and learn from that. And I feel with the advent of TikTok and Twitter and X showing video more, the power of video is really important in our society at the moment. So what would happen? Do you transcribe it if someone says, "Oh, actually, I'm not great with video on learning"? Could you transcribe it for me? I'm just thinking, do you find options for people, or is it really this is the most efficient way? We think this is the best way for you.
You listed out all the sources, right? It's in writing, it's an audible format, and it's in video. So we're using all three,
Mm,
right?
mm,
So I wrote books that I recorded on Audible.
right.
So it's not right. But before you and I got on our podcast, I was on my treadmill, as I am every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for 90 minutes. I'm either watching a YouTube video or I am listening to an Audible version of a book or a podcast, right? So I'm habit
Yeah.
stacking like
Yeah.
crazy all the time, as probably a lot of our listeners are right
Mm,
now. Just be careful if you're driving. And so I think you have to offer all three mediums to whoever your audience is, because like normally what happens with our clients is we build a playbook. We'll build an outline of all the elements that belong in their organizational business development playbook,
mm,
so that within 6 months or a year or 2 years, you have a really great resource catalog
yeah.
of it's in writing.
Mm,
You can listen to it in your car. You can watch a video, and just those are all great tools for learning. And then you combine that with some live action practice sessions, some skill building, which are things we do for ourselves, things we do for our clients. And guess what? You're going to get better at the skill.
yeah.
It's
So tell me a pitfall that one of your clients has struggled with when it comes to their sales process.
Let's see. A couple of things that come to mind. I think number one, most companies don't have a thoughtful, user friendly sales playbook. Okay. I'd say that's very common. And so some companies do have sales playbooks, but it's this massive thing
Mm.
that's like cracking open War and Peace, or there's another book, Atlas. Was it Atlas Shrugged?
Oh, I don't know that, but I know War and Peace is. I tried reading it. I got 300 pages in, and I was like, yeah, whatever
Atlas
happens in that
Shrugged.
relationship and those people, I don't
It's
care
a
anymore.
crusher. Like, so a lot of the sales playbooks are like that. Like people are just the attention span is short. So if you have it organized in a way where, okay, if I'm calling new customers, what are the things I should be doing?
Mm.
If I'm asking for a referral, what are the things that I should be doing? If I'm running a quarterly business review with a customer, give me the best practices. Like, you want referenceable material supported by some kind of audio or video. That's the kind of the gold standard. So that's a huge mistake. They don't identify what the top 5 activities are for each customer facing individual. They don't ask for referrals. Referrals aren't a part of their business. They don't take advantage of one-to-many sales opportunities like webinars. Some companies are great at webinars. Some are just completely missing the boat. So they're not diverse enough in their prospecting approach. They're too one-dimensional, two-dimensional. And probably they don't have a really savvy sales leader, because you could be great at a skill, but doesn't make you a great sales leader.
Mm.
And usually great sales leaders weren't the best salesperson. And usually companies promote the best salesperson to be the sales leader, and they're wired different. Great salespeople are interested in personal success.
Mm.
Great sales leaders are interested in the team's success.
So it's a really interesting idea, because when I worked in a corporate, you moved up the levels, you developed skills within those areas, you hit management, and suddenly you're managing a team. You might have been really good at whether it was sales, operations, tech, whatever it was that
Yeah.
you were working in, but you never had
Yeah.
any experience of managing people. And that, I think, is one of the biggest challenges that companies, especially larger companies, can struggle with, because they promote the
Yeah.
people that are excelling in the technician role. But to go to an E-Myth, technician, manager, operations, and
Mhm.
entrepreneur, it's one of my
Yeah.
favorite books. They
Me too.
don't have that skill set, so they need to learn that skill
Yeah.
set.
Yeah.
And but how can leaders, so leaders of companies, how can
Mhm.
they think about that we need to train our people in managing people beyond the technician's role?
I think most very large corporations have built in management training. Most of them do, the large corporate structures. The smaller to medium sized corporate structures have less of that. At the executive level, is the executive level leadership adequately skilled in training the next level of manager? Maybe
Yeah.
not. Is that a good use of their
Yeah.
time? My opinion, like, I'm a massive outsourcer. I own an outsourcing company,
Okay.
and I outsource everything that I can.
Mm.
So people outsource some of their sales leadership or sales development or leadership development training and coaching to us. I believe in that. Like, I'm not an expert CPA, so I have a
Yep.
bookkeeper and I have a CPA and I have another alternate tax
Mm.
advisor. And I'm a firm believer in outsourcing if you don't possess the skills in house.
Or even you don't want to do what you need to do as well to outsource.
That too, right? All email. So there's something that I refer to called an ideal week. And I very much like people to live in their ideal week. And if your ideal week has zero hours of accounting,
Mm.
but you need to do 5 hours accounting in your business every
Mm.
week, outsource it.
Yeah.
And there are going to be some things that you can't outsource, but you have to follow, I believe, the structure of your ideal week or work towards that
Yeah.
ideal week.
Absolutely. So you mentioned earlier about on the treadmill, 90 minutes, 3 times a week.
Yes, sir.
So tell me about your triathlete experiences and how that has taught you things, maybe resilience, strength, persistence, things like that have helped you in your business life as well.
Sure. Oh, yeah, sure. I started doing triathlons in my 30s because I had a client that was training for one. I'm like, tell me about that. And he's like, all you have to do is sign up. Okay, I can do that. So I went home, I signed up for a triathlon, and I probably signed up in January, and the triathlon was April. Riding my bike, I got back in the pool, did a little running. The Friday before the triathlon was on a Saturday, and actually this one was on a Sunday, I think. So the Friday before, I really wanted to quit the race. I was like, I had all the excuses going,
So,
right? It's too cold. I've been able to swim enough. The bike I have I got a mountain bike. I don't even have a road bike, and all the excuses. But I had told every friend, every client that I was signed up for a race that was going to happen in April, and there was no way I was going to go to my weekly coaching session with all my clients on Tuesday morning. And when they asked me about the race, there was no way I was going to go, I don't really have the right bike. I couldn't live with that. And I went out and I did it, and I got passed. Let me tell you, Mark, I got passed by some very fit 72-year-old ladies that on the run. It was a very humbling
Yeah.
experience. But I caught the bug because I followed through and I did what I said I was going to do. So I feel like in life, following through and doing what you say you're going to do is a really important guiding light for all of us. It's a North Star. If there's commitments you're making. So in order to follow through on activities that are challenging for you, I always recommend find at least 5 people that you can tell about what it is that you want to do. And then and maybe it's, like I said, at least 5. In my case, I probably told at least 50 people that I was going to be doing this triathlon. So there's no way I backed out. And when I came across the finish line in that first race, albeit a gruesome time and no
Mm,
medal or
mm,
nothing like
mm.
that, plenty of people passing me most of the race. When they say, "Hey, Chris Jennings from Irvine, California is now coming in," just I caught the bug. And I did about 4 races a year, 4 or 5
Yeah.
for about 15 years. I actually met the woman that I'm married to today because we were both signed up for the same triathlon
Right.
in 2003, and it's just been an awesome experience. I love the community there; it's amazing.
You make a really
So,
interesting point, and I think this is something that people that procrastinate or have a tendency to procrastinate, analysis paralysis, all that sort of problematic area that some people really suffer with, it's having accountability. And I think that's something
sure,
you mentioned, that you told 5 or 50 people that you were going to do it. That made you accountable for actually performing it, actually going and doing the race.
yeah.
How do you what is the importance of accountability for entrepreneurs, for business owners that are growing their business? How do they bring accountability into their lives?
Yeah. Public goals are real goals. Secret goals are just ideas that float around your head.
Mm,
And until you make your goals public, they're just a bunch of ideas floating around your head. And I think Monday has a huge resentment towards all human beings that have, because Monday was promised to start anew and 1,000 different things, a million different
mm,
things, and it doesn't happen. And as an entrepreneur, that you hear like it's lonely at the top. So I feel like you have to find a community of other entrepreneurs and other people. So every Tuesday morning, we have a live coaching session where people come together and we talk about strategies. And it doesn't have to be our community. There's lots of communities out there. And I have gotten involved in different business communities myself and been very active in Visage, for
mm,
example, as a member, as a speaker. And I think peer to peer accountability is maybe the strongest form of
mm,
accountability, right? And because the person you work for, that there's a bit of a parental relationship, and people can't help themselves but try to either impress the parent or avoid the parent is that
mm,
they want.
mm,
And so I find peer-to-peer accountability to be the best. So a lot of times with high performing salespeople, we'll form little accountability groups with people that just want to perform at the highest level and just get honest with where we're at.
yeah,
And
love
I
it.
think that
I
helps.
think that absolutely is so important. The role that people that I have in my life, different skill sets, different businesses, but regularly catching up with them and them keeping you accountable of what you said you were going to do. So there's a lady that I work with at the moment, or not work with, she's a peer. We meet every two
Mhm.
weeks and we
Great.
set at the end of it's only 30 minutes. At the end of that 30 minutes, we agree what we're going to do in 2 weeks. And just keeping that accountability. And I try and have that in different aspects of my life to make me accountable. I think it's incredibly important. But let's move on about authenticity. So
Mm.
I have this question about authenticity, and it's related to AI. And where it's coming from is podcasting. So podcasting is an authentic, I'm talking to you, Chris.
Yeah.
and we're having a conversation, we're talking about business and life and etc. There is an avenue of AI is going to replace podcasters. AI might
Okay.
replace the whole podcast sphere. So what is the importance of authenticity for you when you're teaching or coaching your clients to make sure
Yeah.
that they are giving their honest self, their true self, when they're communicating with teams, with clients, with sales
Yeah.
processes? How do you do that?
Yeah. I think I always like people to connect their story to their audience's story. And yeah, everybody's got a story. And somewhere along the line, like Mark, you and I today, our stories have aligned
Mm,
for these 45 minutes to an hour. We are on the exact same path together. And I think the authenticity and AI right now, the way AI is pretty boxy. It'll evolve, I know, but it won't have the authentic. It won't have the authentic and relatable factor. And customers want to know that you understand exactly what they
mm,
want. They want to know that you care about what they want and that you're good at excuse me, and that you're good at fixing whatever it is that they're looking for. So customers want authentic, real conversations. If you rely too heavily on AI to generate your emails or your messaging or whatever it is, then when you finally are actually in this setting live talking at a certain point, you're going to be really nervous about what to say and what to do, and it's going to work against you. The other thing, I have these call out boxes in the books that I wrote, and usually it's in each one of them it says, "Don't say this, say something like this instead," because most of what we've been taught to say in a sales environment is just gruesome. It's obnoxious, it's offensive, and nobody would ever say that unless they were under
mm,
duress.
mm.
And unfortunately, that's what comes out of most AI bots about what should be said in a sales scenario. And I always say it more like this. And I think your number one goal in sales is to be the most relatable person they've ever spoken
Yeah.
to. And if you can communicate relatability, authenticity, you're gonna figure out very quickly whether or not there's a reason to work together or not. But AI will be out there, Mark. It's going to evolve and
It's
it's going to
evolving
do what
very
it's going to.
quickly. I've seen a couple of examples of where it's getting worryingly good at what they're doing, but I still think there'll be a place for the human. How have you evolved as a leader?
So I shifted. I mean, a long time ago, I don't know when it was, 10 years ago, there was a place in my career where I felt like I was for a long time, I was a good performer. And I would say, hey, if these are the things that I do to be a good performer, do what I do.
Right.
And at a certain point in my career, it really did shift to I was much less concerned with my personal goals and a lot more concerned with everybody else's
Right.
goals. And I think I'm a huge fan of doing goal boards. So at our team offsite, we're going to share goal boards with each other this coming year and talk about what it is that's important, get an update so that we're there to support each other on a daily basis. And I think that's been probably my biggest evolution as a leader. The other thing I've recognized too is a responsibility to provide tools so for our team and other people to be successful. So invested a fair amount of time, money, and energy in just having tools that people could use, even if I wasn't here.
Right.
Right. If someday I vanish off this earth and I won't be here, and all I'll be left behind are some of the tools and memories and videos, et cetera, things that I've created. And so even my part of my legacy that I'm looking forward to leaving is tools that people will be able to come back to again and again over a period of time.
Amazing. What's your risk appetite?
A lot higher than my wife's. My wife has zero
Mine,
risk.
mine too.
That's why we're on the podcast
Yeah,
right now.
yeah,
They're not. And I do a best case, worst case scenario. So when I started
right,
this business, I remember I get the list out. Best case, I have this amazing career. It's personally rewarding. It's successful. I get to help a ton of people. Worst case scenario, I go broke in 2 years and I have no money to my name and I start over.
right.
Can I live with that worst case scenario? Yeah, I could live with that. Let's go. And so I usually do best case, worst case
Yeah, it's
scenario
good,
on
isn't it?
every venture. and look at it from that perspective.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. What's been your biggest challenge, either professionally or personally?
My biggest challenge, I would say saying no and paring down as a doer. And I've loved doing things since, like I shared, since I was 10 or 11 or whatever that
Mm.
was. And I love the serotonin that enters the bloodstream when I do something
Yeah.
and accomplish it, and it turns out that way. You can do that to excess.
Mm.
I'm a serotonin junkie,
Mm.
so I have to learn to what to say no to,
Right.
and I have to pare it down. And to me, that's why I'm a huge fan of the ideal week. The ideal week now is a smaller, more finite shape
Mm.
doing than it used to be.
Mm.
And that's probably been my biggest challenge and ongoing.
Yeah.
And I continue to work through that.
What do you still want to achieve?
I want to look at that set of tools that I'm leaving behind, that to know that kids, my grandkids, could learn from me even if I'm not here. Their kids, etc. Your kids. That's what my third book. That's why I'm writing my third book. It's not for us to grow our business. It's for our kids to have a better life. And that professionally, all the tools are in place that any company could come to our website or grab our book and get directed to what the resources they need to build it
Right.
themselves. So, and if they wanted to build the whole thing themselves, like all the tools are there for them, whether we were around or not.
Mm.
Of course, we'd love to be around, but that's what I have left to achieve. Yeah.
Absolutely fascinating. Look, we're coming to the end of the interview. I ask the same 6 questions to all of my guests. They're quick fire questions. They don't need a quick fire answer. First question is, what's the best decision that you've made?
To marry my wife, Lena. It's going to make me cry. So we just have an amazing relationship. She's an incredible human being. I am grateful for her every day. That's for sure the best decision I've ever made.
Amazing. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
Best piece of advice I've been given: set your expectations low when it comes to other people doing what they said they would do or behaving in the way that you would want them to behave. If you set your expectations low, you will generally have a happier life.
So you're never
If you expect,
disappointed in other people?
yeah. I always say there's only one person in the world that you get to have expectations with. That is your husband, wife, partner, boyfriend, girlfriend,
Mm.
right? That person you can have expectations with. Everybody else, really, they're going to do what they want. They're individuals and they get to make their own, even if it's your kids, if it's your clients, just keep your expectations low. If things work out great, I'm not saying you shouldn't do things or set boundaries or talk to them about what you want,
Mm.
but I'm saying like have no expectation about anybody's ability to do anything.
This isn't part of the questions, but it's just a follow on. Is there anyone that you've worked with as a client, and I don't need to know names or anything, that have disappointed you or not done what they said they would do, and you've then gone, I can't work with you anymore? Have you ever fired a client?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this has definitely happened. And it's just not everybody is up for the
Yeah.
change, right? Change is so hard.
Mm.
And there's so much baggage. And the reason why people do things, one of my other favorite books is, oh gosh, the four agreements,
Okay.
right? And the four agreements basically is in line with keeping your expectations low and don't take anything personal,
Mm.
right? Because somebody's inability to follow
Mm.
direction has probably a lot more to do with their upbringing and their history and their psyche than it has to do with the direction that you gave them.
Right.
And so I don't take things personal when
Right.
people don't follow through and do stuff.
Absolutely. Who's the person that's helped you most in your career?
I would say I'll give my dad credit. Just he built a bit of an independent entrepreneurial streak in me. He taught me things if I wanted to save money for a car someday. I would say just that some of those early lessons that I got about if I wanted something, go do it.
Mm,
And I could do it myself. I didn't need handouts.
mm.
My dad, the public figure though that I would go to is John Wooden. He was a former coach of UCLA basketball
Okay.
team, and John Wooden. They won 10 national championships under his guidance, which is historic,
Mm,
never been done, never will be done
mm.
again. And I spent a lot of time. I'd met him personally a number of times and followed a lot of his advice over the years. Even as like when I was a young parent and young entrepreneur, at the same time, one of John Wooden's a couple of things I got from John were give the time to your family regardless. That's where I also got the hard thing to do and the right thing to do are normally the same.
Mm, mm.
So if I'm doing the things that are hard, it's probably the right thing to do.
Yeah, love
And I'll give one more that I learned from John Wooden was it's what you learn after you know it all that counts.
it.
So if you think you know everything, there's probably more. Like Mark, I could learn more from Mark Hayward today than I probably realized.
Wonderful. Tell me about a regret that you have.
Regret? I've hired some people that were the one regret is I had a friend that I hired once and I had to fire him. And even though we agreed in advance that we'd be friends regardless, we're not friends anymore.
Oh,
And it's a bummer,
yeah,
right? And I'm wishing I never hired him. I'm wishing I just kept it personal. I've had a couple of friends that I've hired and it's worked out really well.
right.
That's one regret that lingers. It's unfortunate,
Yeah,
but that did happen.
yeah. No, that's a really great answer. Tell me something that most people don't know about you.
That most people don't know about me. Yo hablo español, je parle français, et je veux apprendre parler italien.
So, how
So
much of Spanish, French, and Italian do you actually know, or are you fluent?
I'm fluent in Spanish.
Wow.
I can navigate my way around Paris and anywhere in France, no problem. And I don't know much Italian at all, but that's my last language that I'm gonna tackle. I told you I'm a habit stacker,
Right.
so I was on the treadmill doing French lessons, YouTube, like for years because I was at the Paris Olympics
Oh,
2024. My
amazing.
godson Adrian Weinberg won a bronze medal on the
Oh,
U.S.
wow.
Olympic team, and I wanted to be able to speak French while I was there. So
That's so fascinating. Do you find languages naturally, is it? So I don't find learning languages particularly easy, or I didn't when I was younger. Maybe now with a different mindset, it might be something slightly different. But do you find that it's like a, is it a practice? Is it habit stacking that you just learn vocabulary and phrases, and then it becomes more natural when you're doing it? How do you learn a language?
it hurts your brain. Right? It hurts your brain trying to learn a language, and you feel so infant in the beginning. And when, like I said, as adults, and we walk around very accomplished in certain areas of our life, it's hard to take that step back to square one. So it's humbling. But the rewards of so a couple of years ago, my wife and I were in Paris, and we were getting a Uber to the airport. And I was new speaking French, but I was chatting it up with the Uber driver
Right.
and cracking jokes in French. And my wife, we got to the place, she's, Chris, you're doing so good with your French. Like, you're even telling jokes in French. And when I'm in France and I see that the change, the light that comes on when you
Mm,
make an attempt to
mm.
speak their language, that is a great payoff for me. And it's worth all the stupid things that I said.
So I've spent time in France, holidaying and doing various
Yeah.
things, family and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
it's the most demoralizing thing when you've learned a few phrases just to be nice and like ordering things at a restaurant or like getting bread and things like that, croissants and things like that. And the most demoralizing thing about French culture is you try and ask, "Can I have this loaf of bread and 4 croissants?" or something like that. And they then answer you in English.
Oh, yeah.
That I find a
Yeah.
little bit patronizing. I love the French. I've spent great holidays in France and Italy and Spain
Yeah.
and various Greece and places like that. But there is something about the French culture that you ask them something or you a request for something, and then they answer you in English. I find that very demoralizing.
Yeah. So I'll go back to my earlier thing. One of the four agreements is don't take anything personal. That because there's certain people in France, right, with that same example, they're like, "Oh, yeah, you were really close. Say it like this,"
Yeah,
and they'll coach you how to say it the right way. And there's some people who just come right back to you in English because clearly you don't know any French, right? But I don't take that personal.
right.
That is so about them and their upbringing. It's just a free. I live a little lighter, not taking things
Yeah,
personal.
good answer. I want to. My last question I usually ask is, what does legacy mean to you?
So that legacy for me is really an enduring effect of my time here on this earth. So habits and traditions that I've established with my kids or with my friends, people in the communities that I serve, people quoting things that I used to say or remembering things that I did, tools that I leave behind in my business. So that legacy to me is things that carry on beyond me still being here
Right.
and still continue to serve those communities that I've tried to serve in my time here on this
Great
earth.
answer. And lastly, where can people find you if they want to find out more about you and your business?
Yeah, chrisjenningsgroup.com. And if you go to chrisjenningsgroup.com, there is an offer on our books. I think they even can get a free one and just handle the shipping. And or check us out on Amazon. And Jeff Bezos stores a bunch of copies of these. I think at his garage, I was told. And or if you never read books anymore, they're on Audible. But chrisjenningsgroup.com, and you'll get tons of resources. A lot of them are there for free, and just avail yourself to whatever we have. Like the reason I'm still working is I'm trying to be helpful to as many communities as I can while I still have something to
Brilliant.
offer.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you so much for your time. I feel like I've learned things and been reminded of things which I'd learnt before, but sometimes they've slipped. So I've really found this conversation fascinating. Thank you so much for your time.
I've loved the conversation. I'll close with this, as I always say to people, if we could all come up with a list of the former healthy habits that we used to engage in and no longer do,
Yeah,
if we could just re-engage in that
yeah.
list, and hopefully we re-engage in a couple today. You're a great and gracious host. Thank you, Mark,
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank
I
you so
really
much for
enjoyed
your time.
the time.
Thank you. I really hope you've enjoyed that content. It's a really fascinating interview that I've done there. So please do, if you are enjoying this content, please do give it a like. Please do give a subscribe. It'd be really good to boost the subscriptions. It really makes a difference to the algorithm in YouTube. So thank you for that. If you do hit subscribe, hit the bell icon and you'll get all of the content. You'll get notified when all the content is available. Thank you so much for your time. It's really appreciated. Thanks a lot.